So with that, I will jump right into content. So just showing quickly the connection screen or the Connect to Galaxy screen that has been revamped and modified. So the same typical things that you can do is choose your Galaxy repository server name, uh, create new galaxies from different types of existing cab files. But new things like I can view recently viewed galaxies, pin common galaxies that I want to have quick access to, and then as well as any galaxy that exists locally on the server that my IDE exists. Um, now, within that, right, I have my newly refreshed development environment. You can kind of see the modern look and feel with that ribbon bar that John and Ernst have been mentioning before. So one of the things that Ernst had mentioned was the improvement on a few of the CSV import performance, as well as the capabilities of that CSV bulk editing import. So I'm going to be juggling a video for that. Is on the object wizard performance, this is improving so for those who aren't aware, let me pause this. Object wizards are a way of creating kind of a polymorphic template that includes all the permutations and combinations that a asset class might have. Maybe slight deviations of a motor being a 5 horsepower motor or a 20 horsepower motor, or maybe it's from a different vendor and there's slight configuration changes. And so instead of creating a sub template and basically creating a long list of hierarchy, there is the option to create kind of an object wizard, which acts as a polymorphic master template. Now, one of the issues with this is as you kind of got into a large amount of instances of that object wizard or that master template, the check-in performance was slower. So here you'll see in the video, creating a quick object wizard of just, hey, putting in a graphic, a couple of different options and selections, and displaying that check-in time for 10,000 objects. So in the new version, that's around 30 seconds. And doing the same kind of configuration in a previous version took about, I think around 30 minutes or so. So it speeds up. I think 25 is where we land. So that's kind of an improvement on if you are or inclined to use object wizards, the check-in improvement time for those capabilities. The next thing is the improved CSV import. So, and we will. So with that, you can export objects directly from your model hierarchy, or you can go into the backstage, export all the objects, and generate a CSV. So the first main thing that was added was a IO device column. So you can define and designate that IO device grouping. And then in addition, it supports now for configuring those wizard templates in those in instances in the CSV import. And so here you're seeing just different types of object wizard options, different types of choices and groups in terms of creating that import from that export of the selected objects. All right, so there is, let me go back to my live demo. So as Ernst mentioned, there is the ability to authenticate against an Azure AD provider. And so that's done by the configurator, just checking this checkbox and then linking the Azure AD endpoint and ID and secret. And then the exact same roles and permission options and operational permissions or operational groups rather are available regardless of which authentication provider you're using. Maybe a local authentication, a local domain or a cloud domain using Azure. Both are available and both are fully functional in terms of security permissions. So the security logging. So if I go into an example of my OMI application, and you'll see that I'm logged in as a generic random user. Uh, but if I go into my navigation and go to my user events screen, I can see a couple of things that have been added that are new and available that get logged out of the box with System Platform. This was in part of 21 CFR Part 11, but just because you aren't enforced or need to standardize on that standard, you have this ability with the newer version, regardless of industry, regardless of application. So things like application startup, successful logins. If I try to switch the user or maybe first log out um, and then attempt to log in, so if I've got a failed login, if I requery, right, it will also display any failed login, when it happened and when it occurred. And you can kind of see a dashboard for there as well. So all that is available out of the box, kind of like with anything like user set point changes and kind of user traceability. It's kind of expanding upon that feature of, hey, we're logging everything out of the box and it's readily and easily accessible. Um, so kind of diving in a little bit into history playback. So this was released, I think, a few versions ago, but it's kind of acts as a DVR to your SCADA system. So here we have just a basic, faceplate for an asset. So we have a set point value, we have the asset name, and then we have the live value over on the right-hand side. And one of the issues that was there before was if you weren't logging the asset name, or if I wasn't logging the set point value in the historian, for example, if I entered in playback, that information wouldn't be displayed when I wanted to go into that DVR mode. Now, one of the option or the out of the box option within historical playback feature is that if the attribute is not historized in the historian, it will automatically play the live value of that attribute. And you can have different types of settings to designate which are live values and which are historical values. And I'll just kind of go through that right now. So if I quickly just pull up my toolbar and enable the playback, I've entered in a DVR mode. I can have a little graphic pop up that tells me that I'm in a DVR setting. And if I just go back to the recent history, I can see this is a historical value. I can see that, hey, some of these values on this graphic are actually live. And how I've designated them is by changing the color or applying a outline around those attributes and graphics. And so as with any DVR, I can speed this up or slow this down, pause it, go back frames in it as well. And immediately as I disconnect this, right, it'll jump to live values. And while I was in that mode, I'm not losing any, new information that's coming in. All that new information still being logged, still being stored. I've just kind of temporarily uh, disconnected the live runtime to a historical playback mode. Now, how do I create this? How do I actually set this up? Well, it's actually fairly straightforward. So I can go back to my development environment and in my Galaxy, in the backstage, go to configure, and into system, I can go into my Orchestra services. I expand this out, and the first service that I see above up top is the historical data replay service. So what I had done previously as setup to this presentation is I actually created an instance of that service, and in that instance, I actually named it the computer name that the service is going to be running on. So in this case, my computer name that you're seeing here is just called Enterprise. and that's why that name designation is there right now. And I know it'll lag slightly because of my environment, but all I've done is I've assigned this to my enterprise machine, and then I've right-clicked this service and deployed it. So that's all I did previously to get this thing running. And then in my application, I imported that control into my application. Now, you saw when I played some of those, or when I played back those values, right, I saw different color changes that were applied to live values. Well, how do I configure that? So I can go into my Galaxy styles, and there's a new field available called live value playback. So if I scroll down a little bit, and there's an edit button, and I can edit maybe the color, maybe apply an outline. So if I wanted to change this color to maybe red and change the outline to maybe just, we'll call it black, I can apply that and apply those changes. So going back into my runtime environment, I can then pull back up the SCADA playback, click play, and go back. I think, oh, I forgot one thing, was I need to go back into here and click save. There we go. So I saved it. I can then go back to my runtime, and it's changed to that red color, font color, as well as that black outline to display. Again, this is signaling live values that are being displayed as opposed to on the right, which is a historical one. All right, next. Ernst mentioned the map app capability. So I'm going to show a quick live demo of that live map app, and then I can switch over to a video that kind of shows a more complex and dynamic implementation of this new OMI application or OMI app. So here I have my OMI app template, and I have my navigational tree. And if I expand assets, you'll see kind of this replicates my system platform model view. And I have some additional navigation items that I've added to enhance my application. So I can add another navigation selection, and that I call just map. I'm just going to click enter. And within this selection, I'm actually going to search for, and I've already got it searched for, which is this layout that contains my map control, as well as a graphic to dynamically change the functionality of that map application in runtime. So I'm going to just quickly click and drag that layout. And for those who aren't familiar with OMI applications and layouts and what I mean, I'm going to quickly explain that layout that I just dragged. So I'm going to pull that up in a separate dialog box. And basically, I have two sections to this layout, which is basically a container for different sections of a application. So here I have my map control, and I've got some some namespace attributes that are being mapped to different custom properties, defining things like the initial latitude and longitude of my map, as well as do I want this map to be dynamic and following the current asset of my selection, as well as zoom settings and so forth. And then in addition, I have a industrial graphic that is actually using those namespace properties to control those map control properties in runtime. So the reason for that is that the only way to control or edit these properties in runtime is through a graphic rather, is through the namespace of the OMI application. And so that's why we've set this these attributes as so, and then link those to a graphic that I can then interact with those settings in runtime. So we have that, and I can then click preview and show what we've got. So here we got our map application, and here you can see a kind of a higher level graphic that's displaying the total flow of all my different areas and states that roll up into that hierarchy KPI. Um, as I change maybe the zoom layer to a different level, let me change that to 16. As I zoom in, you notice that as I zoom in, different layers of graphics that are more lower level get displayed based on my zoom level. Now I have features where I can uncheck and make unavailable maybe the higher level graphic or even the region level graphics to hide those as well. And as I zoom in a little bit closer, I get individual state graphics as well, right? The different states, their set points and their flow totals. And I have these controls where I can, quickly uncheck or check them on as which layers I want to display. And as I zoom out a little bit, I can enable all of them and they'll appear as well. Now, if I wanted to dynamically change the latitude that I'm looking at or the current zoom level, I can then just adjust these kinds of parameters. And again, that's going to dynamically affect the map control app. All right. So expanding on that, I'm going to actually pop into here. And you see a kind of a much more complex much more complex and neater implementation of this app. Not only do we have that dynamic control over on the right-hand side of unselecting regions and selecting different layers of visibility of different types of graphics, but I can select different areas and have a content presenter kind of contextualize which areas or states are associated to that selection. So those can be asset classes or assets within particular plants or geographically dispersed areas. In addition, right, you'll do a search of, hey, maybe I want to see all the graphics that start with M, and you can see maybe the mountain region therefore. So I can quickly navigate to a lower region of the Nevada state, and I can change um, uh, the currently displayed or the center point to be on, maybe that city of Las Vegas there. And you can see the decimal degrees of that location. Again, you'll change zoom and change the latitude and longitude to maybe, manually select something different. And this will pick somewhere in Alaska. And then click the home button and you get back to that home level screen. There's also different capabilities of being able to exchange information within the map provider as well. And that uh, if you navigate to a different state, you'll notice that there's a different zoom level for a smaller state and maybe a larger state. So Rhode Island gets a more zoomed in look versus maybe a larger state like Texas. And then within that, you can exchange information with the map provider to show the counties specifically for the location that you're seeing. So you can check that box and that will communicate with the map provider to show the different types of counties that are available within that state. Just an example of being able to pass information to and from that application. Let's check my list. All right. So we kind of covered that, and I'm going to jump back into um, my demo and kind of just show the OMI web client live. So within the OMI web client, right, it supports multi-browser just like OMI does. So if I wanted to change, this is a single screen application, but if I wanted to display or display the application or different screens of the application on different multi-monitors, I can manage those directly here. I can share the iframe of this content, um, externally by taking this iframe script and pasting it in an external application. And I can go into maybe a full screen mode, for example, and see that information there. Um, let me. With that, I want to quickly show the workspaces feature. So I think it was mentioned by John and Ernst, but workspaces is a way of creating an ad hoc dashboard at runtime with very simply. So I just click that little new button for workspaces and I get into a separate tab. And here I have a couple of graphics. I have an analog meter and a traditional Wonderware cow as a graphic. But within each of these, I can apply different attributes that are a part of my system, and it'll dynamically change as I edit this. So if I change the value for maybe a tank, I had this running. Let's try running this one more time. I'm going to pull up Chrome, minimize, pull up Chrome, and log into my OMI web client and go back into the workspaces field. Ugh. All right. But what I'll show is, I don't know why I'm coming into that issue, but I will change, oops, let me just add the analog meter and change the max value, and you'll see that it dynamically changes. It should dynamically change. All right, well, technical difficulties with the live demo, but the ability to display different types of KPIs, and then I could dynamically change these values in runtime. It doesn't affect the actual OMI application that you see here, and it's available in an ad hoc display. And lastly, I'll go ahead and show some of the communication driver enhancements that we talked about previously. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint and show the publisher. So here is a video displaying the MQTT publisher, and that we take within the MQTT driver are able to make that broker connection, apply encryption with TLS 1.2 or 1.3 rather, and as well as enter my authentication. You can save those changes and then take the definition of a spark plug format, apply group ID, and publish that to that designated broker. Now, in the subsequent video, you'll see this in the actual Mosquito broker, the display of that same group ID and the information that I'm publishing to that broker, which then can be consumed by other MQTT subscription connections, whether that's from us or other systems. You can manage that data in an MQTT fashion. So how do I manage my MQTT information, right? We talked about that import export. So I can very easily export my Sparkplug MQTT published information, uh, and I get a JSON file. I can then very easily create copies of structures. In this case, I'm creating copies of this name asset called BF and creating instances of it. So here you just see one, and as I import the new config file, I can then see all the different instances of that asset that I've then very quickly created as part of my published configuration. And then there's a browser section where I can then browse and see the hierarchy of the MQTT structure and take those attribute references and export them to a file and then map them to different objects within System Platform to kind of link up that connection between application object and System Platform and device level all through MQTT with that Sparkplug B specification. So here we're showing a OPC UA reverse connect configuration. So instead, so here we're going to import actually the certificate to the OPC UA server, and then that server would then, and some other configuration settings like the credentials, as well as testing that connection to that OPC UA server, and then implementing a reverse connection. So defining the endpoint of that OPC UA server and taking that and making it available for the clients. So the clients would then, or the server would use that URL to make a connection, reverse connection to clients. So you're going to import it here and then test that. So I could take that then endpoint and use that to make that reverse connection. Really, and then really the goal of this is to provide a much more secure way when we're working with OPC UA servers and client connections, rather than having them just strictly from the client perspective. And then lastly, we have the device integration objects. And right, this is the structure, and I'm just going to pause it here, where I had the actual driver structure hierarchy contained within system platform objects. This was an older legacy technology, and some of our customers out there still use this technology. Now, there's a direct migration path to move away from this, in that you can use the OPC client device integration object to kind of replace that hierarchy, to deprecate and move away from that structure. So here they created an instance of the OPC client device integration object. And then in the scan group, there's actually a new field called default. And in that field, there's a hierarchy path where you can then recreate that structure. So in this case, you'll see the bridge or the driver, and then the bridge syntax, as well as be inputted into there. And now telling that OPC client to use the previous existing configuration that the attributes of System Platform were acquiring their data from that Modbus OI server. So being able to move away from those objects into something that's newer and supported and going forward. With that, I'll pause and open the floor to questions on anything that you might have seen here. And I apologize again for the technical difficulties on the workspaces. Are there any questions in the chat that need to be answered? No, I have direct access to that right now.
Anybody? Feel free to fire away at Tim. We have a few minutes here. A couple of minutes. When's our next?
10 minutes, I think.
Oh, wow, you went fast.
I did.
Is there anything you skipped you want to get back to?
Not particularly. Robert's got a question. What do you got, Robert?
So when's this being released?
It is already out.
This is 2023 is already out.
Already out. Yeah.
Boy, Luke is lucky he's not on this chat right now.
It was released, I think, about a month or two ago, so it's still fresh.
Okay.
But yeah, it's out. Is there anything in mind that is of interest for you?
Well, there, like any upgrade you guys do, there's a lot of my concern is just the amount of changes you guys done, how it's going to affect the previous upgrades,
Yep.
And I again, what we just don't know of how many changes have you guys done in the back end other than just making it pretty with the ribbons and all that kind of stuff. And this MB, like you just did, this hierarchy path is just how does this stuff get defaulted in? I mean, when you guys add features, when you add features, I'm sorry. So when you guys do add features, I ran into this on the 2020 upgrade, is that the defaults kind of messed, my integration up. So that's just my concern is when you get new things like this, and someone added in the comment, are we getting a list of changes that happened between 2020 and 2023? And I guess, do we get that from our sales guy?
So actually, Tim probably might know it. In the download, there are release notes always with the installation, and then it'll go through basically the highlights of all the major changes in the release notes that they try to force you to read when you download the software.
Okay.
So.
All right.
We have content that we can also deliver to you as well. That you can, if you don't want to go there, right, just have us, we can send you something as well.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Tim, do you want to take the question here from Richard?
Yeah. So the bulk import that you saw there is just managing instances of and choosing the designation or the template designation that they're related to. But within the object toolkit that Ernst had mentioned, that's where you can do bulk creation of templates and do that through kind of a programmatic way. So there's lots of enhancements supporting modern versions of Visual Studio and things like that are coming with that object toolkit that Ernst had mentioned.
I got one more question. Regarding, you kind of grazed over that, like part of the CFR part 11 regarding logging all the stuff that we do behind the scenes. Now, where's all that at? Where'd you?
Oh yeah, so I can actually show a little bit of that configuration. So in my OMI application, I created a selection that all I did was have an event application.
Okay, so wait a minute. So see if that part is not part of the 2023, just the system platform. That's just OMI.
No, it's a part of. You can use it within InTouch as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and all I did here was within the alarm grid was choose historical events as part of the query, and then those events would then get displayed in the query. Things like application startup, user login attempts. So things like traditional or past user events that were logged were like a user make a set point change, for example, that would get logged automatically. So in addition to to things like that, application startups, successful logins, failed logins, application shutdowns, all get logged into that event subsystem, which if you have an alarm grid or alarm query of that subsystem, you can then just quickly retrieve that information.
So if you deploy or undeploy, now that's part of the event. Is that what you're saying? If you undeploy, you redeploy, like the back end stuff, like undeploy, redeploy, add an instance, make an attribute update, those type of logs.
So those get logged. So those get logged.
Because part of CFR Part 11 as well is also making any edits to the design as well, by the way.
Right. So those are already logged as part of like the object, version instances of like, what has been changed and the hierarchy or the progression path of how that object or template or instance has evolved, and that gets logged.
Okay, so it's not part of this.
Yeah, that's
Gotcha.
been a pre-existing feature on the development side.
Okay,
and then
no, I just thought I saw. I just thought going through your demo. I just thought I saw that was part of the event thing. That's why I asked. So
gotcha.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so there was a question in the chat about licenses. So in order to run the 2023 software, you do need to upgrade those licenses. So there are separate licenses for the 2023 release that are required. For those who are considering Flex, using Flex within System Platform, the only thing that you need to do, the licenses still function and activate, identically. But in terms of configuration of your application, you just have to enable this Flex mode checkbox that you see here. And then if you're using the supervisory version or enterprise version of System Platform that we've been talking about, you check these radio selections. In this case, this is the enterprise software package, which is actually a completely different ISO file and install with things that are different between the two packages. So as Ernst mentioned, right, this name might eventually change moving forward, but for now, this new edition of System Platform that's more geared towards or intended for the enterprise layer is called System Platform Enterprise.
Okay, I'm going to ask another question. I'm getting confused here. So
Yep.
I'm looking at your presentation. You had System Platform, OMI, and configuration. So
Yep.
Is System Platform also going to 2023 as well as OMI? Or are we just talking OMI is going to 2023?
Everything's already 2023.
Everything's all of it. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, all things System Platform related are 2023.
Okay, so everything jumped.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the only addition was, or that was not available in the past, was that System Platform Enterprise offering. That's actually the software that you're seeing here, which gives access to that OMI web client, as well as some other different types of things that are available. And mainly those things that are available, like the Power BI app and the Syncy app that Ernst had mentioned, are more geared toward, we're finding that they're more geared toward those enterprise level use cases. And so that's why they're available in that package. As well as because OMI Web is an HTML5 based visualization client, there were, some of the functionality that existed within OMI in the form of apps didn't translate over to that HTML5 interface. So kind of mirrored functionality was created in the form of, and I'll pull this up. Where's my ID? Here it is. So if I go into widgets, some of that functionality was implemented as a part of a widget to display some of the same content in that OMI web client. So we saw kind of a basic one, actually something, while I have time, I can actually show something that Ernst had created, which is a much better looking OMI web client. Go to web and pull that up. I don't know. So here in the web client, right, showing the alarm screen, a basic trend, the content presenter in the form of a widget, the map app is a form of a widget, as well as some other, faceplate kind of KPI graphics as well related to different regions. And you see all that kind of contextualized and dynamically changing based on the navigation selection. So behaving very, very similar to OMI, but just in a native web browser. So you're seeing kind of how that looks and feels in a more kind of built out application. Here he's using the QR widget to actually redirect the navigation to a different location. So just as an example of what you can do with different types of widgets and things like that in OMI web.
Hi, my name is Javed. I have a quick question.
Sure.
So we are using 2017 update 3 SP1. We can convert directly to 2023, or we need to go to 2022 first.
Yeah, you can upgrade directly to 2023.
And all the function will get converted to 2023.
Yep.
You have, like you said, you mentioned you have a document where you show the difference between 2017 and 2023.
Yeah.
We can see in the new.
So we kind of have like a high level document that goes over some of the high level changes. If you want to see each specific change that was made between releases, you'd have to go to the release notes or the README file for each subsequent release. So 2020 would have a release notes that are difference between 2017 and 2020, and then 2020 are 2, and then 2023. But we do have a high level diagram or slide that kind of goes over kind of some high level points of what's been changed between, I think it goes a little bit further back between 2014 and all the way to 2023.
Thank you.
Yep.
Tim, there's a question in the chat about DCOM. I don't think we had any plans to discuss this. I mean, usually when people were talking about DCOM, it's usually mostly around, communication servers, or OPC in particular really is the DCOM. So I don't know if you have any feedback on this or not, but I don't think we really had since you were talking communication OI gateway.
Yeah. Aviva does have an official tech note or kind of statement on the DCOM changes that are being kind of enforced in 2023. Who knows? Maybe Microsoft pushes it out again. But all the details in terms of how to handle DCOM going forward. And preventing issues within respect to our software, there's an official policy note that we can kind of deliver to you directly. So I would recommend reaching out to your account manager, and we can deliver that tech note in terms of Aviva's official policy. I just don't have it handy right now.
Is that on the? It's probably on the tech support website too.
Yep. If you do have an account on the global customer support website. Actually, maybe I'll just go to it right now. So softwaresupport.aviva.com will get you to here. If you don't have an account, I'll encourage all of our customers to create one. And I think it was up maybe here. No. Okay. Yeah, I'd have to dig through and find that update. I just don't want to do it live here in front of everybody. But yeah, we can dig that up and give you that official stance.